Hello and welcome back. This is the Gavilan Hills Vineyard here at Paradise Ranch, and we're working on our third year. We're going to do something a little different today. I've got a lot of questions about the cost of putting in the vineyard. So I'm going to be going through and talking about that today. I'm going to try and see how long my camera is going to last, because currently it's 5 o'clock. We're mid-August 2024. The temperature right now is about pushing right at 100 degrees at 5 o'clock at night. So my camera doesn't like heat, so I'm going to see what I can do to make sure I can get through this video. Just as a background for those who are new to this video, we're in our third growing season for these vines behind me. We're located in Southern California in a very dry, very hot, obviously, and drought climate here. If you take a look at the USDA Hardiness map here, we're located right in 10A. We're in zone 10A. So, you know, we're dealing with drought, with heat, with dry weather. It's been unique though. For the last month, we've been in the 30 to 50% humidity range, which is very unique. So I've had to deal with spraying and making sure we don't get any kind of powdery mildew on our plants. But that's where we are. That's who we are. Let's get started on this and talk about the cost of what it costs us for this vineyard. I'm actually going to break this into two parts. I think if I do one part, it's going to be way too long, so I'm going to do two parts. Part one is, what is the goal of your backyard vineyard? What's the goal? What are you looking for? What's your exit strategy? And also the selection. What kind of plants are you going to select? Rootstock? What size are we going to have? That's going to be part one. Once you determine the size, then it's easy to determine the cost. And we'll go through the cost on part two of this video. So let's get started. So what's your goal? What's your goal to have a backyard vineyard? Is it going to be a hobby vineyard? Are you just going to do 10, 12 plants, 2 plants, 20 plants? And this is not for table grapes. We're not going to be talking table grapes, because table grapes is a different animal than what we're doing. The entire discussion will be based on growing wine grapes. And it's going to depend on how much money do you have? How much money do you want to budget for a vineyard? How much time do you have? Do you have a lot of free time? Do you have, just a little bit of time, maybe working a night? It's really going to depend on how much time, how much budgeting you have, and how much energy. I mean, to build what we built back here with our 300 vines took a lot of physical strength, the best way to put it, because we couldn't get any mechanized equipment back there. So how much money you got, how much time do you have, how much energy you have to follow up with this on a daily basis, and lastly, how much space. If you've only got room for 10 or 20 vines, that's fine. If you've got a half an acre like we've got, a little over, then it makes it even better. So what are your goals setting out for your vineyard? The goals for our vineyard were different, and they're not going to be the same as what your goals were. Initially, what we wanted to do was this entire area behind us here, behind this patio, was all dirt, and all we wanted was to put in a vineyard. We said a small vineyard at the time, but put in a vineyard that made this area look nicer. So the first thing we did was we laid it out to see how many vines I can get in here. And in our initial setup, we were able to get 200 vines in this area. From that, we were able to set a budget. We set a budget of about $5,000 for those 200 vines. Now, we went about 15% over. It really cost us about a little less than $600 for those 200 vines. So we were pretty close. We're about 15% over our budget for that in the first 2 years. We started with 200 vines, as I said. We had 100 Cabernet Sauvignon, which is right here, and 100 Grenache. Up on top, we still had more dirt area, and we weren't sure what we were going to do, but we were able to add another 100 vines up there going into our second year, which was last year. And that was all white, Chenin Blanc up there. So we have Cabernet Sauvignon, Grenache, and Cabernet and Chenin Blanc up on top. So based on our research of the 200 vines, what we wanted to do was we wanted to make some wine. Our first goal was to be a small winemaker and create enough grapes, enough grapes to do a small winemaker. Now we realize now that we're going to have more than we really want to make. So we're going to be selling a lot of our grapes also to other home winemakers who aren't able to have a vineyard like this. So it worked out really well. We've got 200 vines, an extra 100 vines on top. We're going to be adding another 50 vines on the front part of the property because this has gone over so well. The cost obviously went more than $5,000 because we added the extra vines, but that's okay. We had an added benefit that we weren't planning on. If you take a look at this area right here, we are actually able now to do events and weddings. We've done a couple of weddings already with the backdrop of the vines. We've got a couple of parties. We've got a baby shower coming up, a quinceanera coming up, and like a business mixer they're going to do here. So as an offshoot of what we've done, we're able now to actually host and make some money just from the vineyard and the way we've got it set up. So that worked out really nice. So our goals are going to be different than yours. Our goals kind of changed a bit, but they worked out really nicely with what we've got and the way things turned out. So bottom line is, set some goals on what you're looking for. It makes it easier because when I get into a couple of the things here, do you want to be dealing with 50 gallons of wine, or do you only want to be doing 5-gallon carboys? So that's going to really depend on what kind of goal you want to set. So the second part of this is selection. What grapes do you want to grow? So if you're going to be doing wine grapes, you're going to really need to understand your environment, your climate, where you live. When you take a look at these variety diagrams, they call them, you can see that up in the top left there are grape varieties that don't grow in very hot weather. Down in the bottom right you'll see that you've got Grenache, Cabernet Sauvignon, which grow much better in warmer weather. So you need to pick a variety that you like. Now we had, actually down the hill over here, we had a friend of ours who planted about 50 vines. He planted Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. Neither one of them handle well in this heat, and in 2 years into it he had to rip all of those vines out and start over again. So what you don't want is, you don't want to pick grapes just because you like those grapes more than anything else. You're going to have to pick grapes that will grow in your environment. Whether it's heat, lots of rain, more cold. We had to deal with the issue with heat, and the Grenache does phenomenally well and is very vigorous in this heat that we have. So once you've picked your variety from here, now some of them, we do know that Cabernet Franc and Tempranillo down in Temecula do real well. That's one of the ones that they really like to grow down there. Syrah and Sangiovese. Those are some big ones they do down in Temecula. It's a little different down there. There's a little cooler. They got more ocean breeze than we have, so they can be able to do those kind of grapes. So those work pretty good down there. Once you pick your variety, now you've got to pick rootstock. Now rootstock is genetically engineered. It's what they do is they graft on Cabernet Sauvignon, or they graft on Grenache, as you can see here, onto the top of the rootstock. Now we picked 1103P. If you look on the web, you'll be able to find diagrams that look something like this, as you can see on the screen. These are diagrams that kind of walk you through your environment, what kind of vigor you're looking for, if it's drought or non-drought, more water, more sand, more soil, and you could pick out a specific rootstock for your area. Now we had 1103P for the Cabernet and the Grenache. The Chardonnay, I couldn't get 1103P, so we used 110R, which is essentially the same, just a minor difference to it, but it actually works better with a white grape for 110R. So when you're dealing with it, you're going to need to pick your variety and then your rootstock. Do your research. Do the research, because this is not inexpensive. This is probably the most expensive part in the entire thing of trying to purchase good rootstock. And I recommend rootstock. You can get them already planted. You can get them different ways, but we ordered them in bulk from up north. There's 2 or 3 different nurseries up there you can get from. So I would do that. Select your variety and get a good rootstock. Now that you've selected your rootstock, your variety, kind of get an idea of what you want, how many grapes are you going to grow? How many grapes, how many vines are you going to be planting? And you can watch one of my videos on planting vines. I did some extra work when I planted these vines. All of the vines are planted with some rootstock stimulator. I actually planted them with about 2 pounds of crushed glass around them to keep the gophers out. I put in watering tubes, which you can see my video on watering tubes. So there's a lot of things you can do with planting, but you need to select how many vines you're going to pick. And it's all going to depend on how much room you got, number one. You'll have to lay it out. But if you take a look at this, for example, if you do 10 vines, let's say you do 10 vines, simple, small, maybe along a fence like we've done with ours. We've got a lot of vines that are actually on the fence, a chain link fence around the whole property. I've got 4 vines just up against the house. 10 vines, based on the variety you pick, how vigorous they are, the rootstock, the soil. There's a lot of different variables, but you could get 4 or 5 pounds, 6 pounds. You could get 10 pounds. You can get 15 or 20. We're expecting as much as 15 pounds per vine. So if you're doing 10 vines at just 10 pounds a piece, that's 100 pounds. That would give you 5 gallons, that's a carboy, maybe a little more, 25 bottles. So, you know, that's 10 vines. If you jump up and you're doing 50 to 75 vines with that same kind of vigor or medium growth, you could get as much as 60 gallons. And 60 gallons, that's 1 barrel of wine. So you really need to understand how much work are you willing to do when you're doing your home winemaking. It's going to really depend on how much room you have. Now our vines, as you can see here, our vines are spaced about 6 feet apart. The rows are 6 feet apart and the vines are 6 feet apart. The reason I did that was because we're on a hill. I'm not going to get any kind of tractor in between them. I'm not going to be able to put any kind of really lawnmowers or anything. Everything is by hand. So because everything is by hand, I could put them a little closer together. Plus they're on a hill, and as they go up the hill, the vines don't block each other and they get plenty of sun. So spacing is going to be what determines how many vines. We have friends that have 25 vines. We have another couple that have, like I said, he's got 50 down there. Another one has 150. We got somebody I know that has 1,000 vines, and he handles 1,000 vines just fine. If I had 1,000 vines, it would drive me bananas. My 300 is enough, and I'm going to add a few more to maybe give me a 350, 375, and I think that's it. Can't imagine 1,000 vines. But it's going to depend on what you want. Now we've got fencing, perimeter fencing all the way around, but I actually put vines on the fencing and up against the house, so I kind of spread it around and made it more circular around the whole property. But when you're looking at the numbers, for example, let's say you've got 5,000 square feet. Now 5,000 square feet, what did I write down? 5,000 square feet garden is like 4 two-car garages. It's a pretty big area. It's a pretty big area, but you can get, I don't know, 5 bottles if you put it, see, what did I put in there? I've got like 50 vines, 50 to 75 vines. Step it up and move up to where we are. We're on a half an acre. We've got a half an acre. We've got 300 vines moving to maybe 400 vines. And a half an acre is what, 100 feet by 100 feet? That's a pretty big area, half an acre, excuse me. So it depends on what you want. Now with us, we're going to have, in the end, when we're all done in the next couple of years, we'll have 350 to 400 vines. We'll have 5 different varietals. Of those, we should get 4,000 to 5,000 pounds per year from all those different varietals. Now we're only going to be doing winemaking with probably 2,000 pounds, maybe 2,500 pounds. Whatever is left over, we're going to sell to the other local winemakers. So we'll be able to make a little bit of money there, because with that, with 2,000 gallons, we're going to be, that'll be 1,000 bottles. I mean, 1,000 bottles a year. Everybody we know, every friend of ours will always get 4 or 5 bottles for their birthday. So that gives you an idea. So set some goals, figure out what you want. What's your exit strategy? In other words, how many gallons of wine do you need? Remember, if you're only doing 25, 30, 40 vines, you can do 2 or 3 carboys, 5-gallon carboys, glass carboys, 5-gallon buckets, and it's not too bad. With us, this year we should get about maybe 1,500, we should get 500 or more, maybe 700 pounds of Cabernet Sauvignon and 1,000 pounds of Grenache. This is our 3rd year of growth. With that, we're going to need something more than just carboys. And I'll show you, take a look at these. I bought 2 100-liter storage tanks. These are variable capacity tanks. I'm going to hold 25 gallons each. I've got another tank also that I just bought that I'm going to be picking up this week. It's a 300-gallon tank that gives me 75 gallons. Plus I've got some 30, 40, and 50-gallon food grade bins for fermentation. So when you get up to 300 vines, you're really going to have to think about it, because the cost of the vines is not much. It's the cost of those the winemaking equipment is going to be more than what the cost to put these vines in are. So thank you for joining me on this first half. Now we covered the goals, we covered your site, we covered all the planning you need to do. The next part of this video, let's go over what all that costs, okay? It won't be as much time, but we'll cover it. If you please join me, come back again, click subscribe, all the things that go along with that, and we will get back to you here shortly. Again, this is Jeff, and we're out.